If you want to start a boat project but it intimidates you, don't let it. Find me on Patreon and we can get past it.
What's going on, everyone? Starters, we have new merch. We have updated stuff. We're always constantly getting new stuff, including these sweet hats by Richardson. And decals as always. Anything from a decal all the way to shirts, hoodies and hats, whatever you need. It's all right on our site. Check out our merch section. It's also in the description area of this video below. Secondly, this boat series, because of the timeline I had to do and everything, I had the boat done a little bit ago. It's gonna take me a while to push out everything to the general public, but the entire raw video series is on Patreon right now for the diehard tier and up. Just access the playlist, and then all the other tiers, I'm gonna be leaking all those raw videos on the main feed. This video is about how I cleared out the rest of the boat and then began slowly restoring the subfloor along to the side panels, and how we installed a cooler mod, how to properly install a cooler in your boat if you have a boat big enough, or if it's just a mod that you really want done. We'll show you how to do it all right here. Stay tuned. The hardest thing about gutting this boat wasn't getting all the stuff out or getting the frame out. It was all the carpet glue. The carpet glue was terrible. At first I went at it with like Goo Gone and a scraper, and then an oscillating tool with like a scraper blade attachment was really the best way of getting the bulk of it off. But even after then, there was still just so much of it everywhere. But we handle that later. This time we kind of focus on getting the rest of the stuff out as much as we possibly can, which involves moving all the carpet and then eventually removing all the glue from the carpet. So let's get the subfloor out first. The subfloor, you can feel it physically failing when you step on it.
Oh, you know, that doesn't really help me. It doesn't help anything. It also doesn't make sense. Like, why would you put a drain there and then, like, no hole? Like, I mean, I guess a drain in the crevices? That really kind of blows.
So there's a little bit of nonsense that happened during the construction of this boat build, but really not a lot. Not for what you normally see ripping out a boat this old. The next thing we really have to get out is the subfloor. It's a big thing. So getting all of it, it feels like it's wedged super tight, like whoever stuck it in there super tightly wedged it in there. So we're trying to remove all this residual carpet and get it off, and then get the console off before we can even go in there and do anything. And then there's also a million screws in the subfloor attaching it to the bottom of the aluminum frame. We have to find all those.
What the freak, man? Not even caught anything? Yeah. Somebody's a worm dragger. Nick, you and I are gonna have a talk. I'll come back to pull it up here. Well, alright.
I'm not sure why it won't come up. At least at this point, it turns out there was like some rogue screws in there that I just could not see in the carpet. I looked for them. I like looked forever. I got most of them out, but eventually
Yay.
I got this subfloor out.
Oh yeah, there's two of them. There was that one, and then there was the other one. Piece of crap. Off like that. That just fall right off. So, just when I thought I had all the screws that I apparently didn't. That's the real reason why it was so hard to get out. Look at it, just come right off. And that's actually maybe the worst, because the rest of the carpet is coming off like this, but not near as bad. But this subfloor, toast. Look at that, man. It just poured off. That's like, look at it. It's cancer. Whatever. Live life while you can, ladies and gents. Done. Talking about residual long-term damage, and eventually the stuff just gives. Not meant to last forever. Even the other stuff inside the compartments, which is probably the more clean stuff, less exposed to UV. I mean, it's still tacky, if we're being honest. Maybe not the best job. If you look at the swirls where there's lots of it and then not good amounts of it, like maybe not the best job there, but the good thing is that's the strangest crap I've ever seen. Screw won't go in, won't go out. It's just like stuck there. That was very strange. Between you and I was not expecting that. Was not. Okay. You freaking slacker. Okay. So that will go back there. Okay. Dude, this person did a pro job carpeting this boat. It's like perfect, like seamless. You think they're two pieces, but they're not lines. Like, I am impressed. Sweet. Pain in my face.
This boat was actually flowing great. I was like, man, I'm gonna get this thing done in record time, until I started actually taking all the carpet off and realizing what a pain it was to get all the glue off. This part actually slowed me down substantially, but then my friend Nate turned me on to xylene, said that that was the best stuff you could use to ever get the adhesive off. That, or you could just use a bunch of Goo Gone, but you know, it's just cheaper to get a big giant bucket of xylene.
No, I hate carpet. That's not a good idea.
Parts of the carpet where the UV obviously wasn't hitting it all the time were the parts that were the hardest to get off, and where the glue was the most tacky. And you know, that was throughout the boat. Eventually got all of it off.
And then this is all unscathed. It's a big giant mess. To clean all the glue out of all these spots and prep it for like another lying surface, it's just gonna be terrible. We're gonna go ahead and take this off. The boat was put together pretty smartly. It was pretty smart with the race here, and this is obviously another big structural beam, structural wall here running from the bank. We are not going to touch this. We're leaving the frame intact. We're really adding on to the bulk of what was in there, and that's because that frame was literally riveted to the main wall and then very, very loosely tack welded in other spots, which we can absolutely compensate for with rivets and pulls and stuff, and making sure it all has what it needs to have. Xylene doing it. Before that, I was using Goo Gone. The good thing about Goo Gone is it doesn't have any sort of aroma. You won't like die of the fumes. I mean, so that's what's good about it. Actually, I think that's the wrong I don't know. I'm gonna keep on using the xylene. I bought that thinking that was like adhesive remover. I think it's latex paint cleanup. Whatever. The xylene's my best bet to get the rest of the spots where it needs to get off. So it needs to get off. I got most of it off with the Goo Gone on this side. I just really gotta go and chew on it. That's the only thing holding us up here is the prep work of getting this. All has to be cleaned before we drop anything in. Just So I got a lot of it, most of it even. It's odd, I don't think I'll ever get all of it off, but what's left of it is actually tacky. It's like the reducer, the xylene, kind of activated it. Well, it wouldn't come off, it became very tacky. At that point in time, it's its own adhesion promoter. At this time, I think the very, very little bit left, the like 2% left, actually might act as a residual heat adhesion promoter. So my idea to go in and pressure wash it and do these things, I don't know if that's going to create more damage or do anything useful. I would like to do it because of what I see in here, especially with the foam floor, but I think maybe the best thing I can do with the foam floor, maybe I just might have to pressure wash this thing out. I'm going to drag it out. It's got residual problems. I think might only be able to, I really do have to go in here and clean it. It's got problems for sure. That came out all right. Not perfect. There's a lot of things we can get around with anyways. We'll be okay here. This is good. It's good for what we need it to be good for. What we need in... We're going to start doing this pretty quickly. One thing is we have to figure out is like this. That was used to be... So this was here in the original subfloor, and this is what it looked like. So they spray painted it black, so under this, it was deceptive. Made it look like there was an actual hole there. But when we pulled the subfloor up, it was just the foam spray painted black. So, obviously, that's not gonna fly. What we're gonna do, so we have an auger bit. It should reach the depth. We need a hole. Okay. I just don't want to touch the bottom of the hole. Okay, I think that's all she wrote. Down there, it's actually, that's aluminum. So the auger bit won't go through the aluminum. All of it, I watched it come up, none of it was saturated. And if you ever want a core sample foam to find out whether or not you want to replace it or need to replace it, you could take an auger bit in and do a core sample, and then stick your finger in and then obviously identify the pieces and see whether or not they're saturated. You would see water coming, or you would see discolored foam that's saturated with water is like darker in color. Obviously you could tell it's wet. None in here, so this foam's in pretty good shape. I'm happy about that. So I don't really know how the water drained. I mean, but whatever. We're going to go ahead and make a true, actual deal. So we're going to go ahead and make the smallest little hole with an extension in it, maybe the big, like a 1/2-inch drill bit. All it just needs to be is a hole there, and then we'll put in epoxy, marine epoxy. We're going to have to marine epoxy all this foam, put in a layer of marine epoxy over it again, because we cleaned it in certain areas. It took off the entire skin, so now it's not really closed cell anymore. So we're just giving it a little bit of time to dry, but we did clean the initial foam off, so we could re-epoxy over it, make this hole, epoxy over it. We're gonna have to let that dry. Maybe put some extra hardener in it so it dries faster. But that'll reseal the foam again for when we put the subfloor on, and that's pretty invaluable. We need to do that. Okay, and I can definitely see. Now we just gotta get epoxy and smudge it all up in there and reseal all this, or this will start to soak in water as water goes in. As we seal the rest of it, we'll seal that. So this has been sitting for a minute. It's at least set. It's definitely not going to be cured. It won't be cured for 24 hours, but it's been setting for a few hours. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the subfloor over it. It fits like a glove. I love it.
Our plan for this was to put gator skin everywhere we possibly could because of its sheer robustness and resistance to weather deterioration. Essentially, whatever you think we just went through with the carpet, we will not have to ever go through that with this stuff. Because for one, it's not going to fade and degrade and crack and deteriorate and explode like carpet does over time. This stuff will stay on forever, and its degradation to the sun is pretty abysmal because it has UV inhibitors inside the entire thing. So this stuff can be really black and just not ever go out. Kind of like a dash mat, like the new age dash mats in the cars. Those don't ever go out because they have the same UV inhibiting stuff in it that allows it just to stay fairly nice forever, despite the constant beating from the sun.
So the black, we're committed from now on. Like, it's black on all the walls. You know that's like gonna get hot. Well, this stuff's seriously impervious to heat. You throw a little water on it, it cools down. So we'll be good.
To finish the subfloor, we had to put rivets through it. I marked black spots on the adjacent walls and then just made sure I had a line up there, and that's where the beam was that I could attach the rivets through the subfloor. Now, it was just going to be really hard to skin that thing while it was already in, so that's why I skinned it prior to doing this. But how I get around, you know, covering up these rivet heads right through the brand new gator skins is I use Plasti-Dip or liquid tape black. It'll get the same matte finish and it looks pretty much the exact same once you cover it over and it dries and cures. Next we have the cooler mod. Now, I vowed to put a cooler in a boat, like a full-size one. Now I have a boat finally big enough to do it. We're going to just make a drain hole for it through a TH Marine drain fitting or compartment drain fitting. I should have reversed that auger bit and that wouldn't have cracked. I did weld that crack you saw right now. I re-welded it back up with a soldering iron. So how we get around that is we attach a TH Marine drain fitting. On the bottom, the actual skin inside a cooler is actually very thin. It's just more or less backed with pour foam inside of it. So how we, you need a backing. I saw that Anthony Jones used a wooden backing in his to complete it. We are just going to go ahead and pour more resin in there. Since foam is a resin in and of itself, we're going to put a very, very hardening resin that's going to like sink into the foam before it eventually hardens around the fitting, creating an absolute watertight and extremely robust seal for the whole thing. This is a hardening resin that I used to make baits out of, but really you could just go get that 5-minute epoxy Gorilla Glue and do this, and it would do the exact same thing. It would give you the exact same result, almost.
And there it is, kind of steaming and smoking a little bit. But that resin is already hot and solid. We'll just let it cure over the next 20 minutes. And that is like a permanent part of the cooler now. Ooh, that's hot. Whew. Yeah, that's a permanent part of the cooler now. That was done in a matter of seconds. It's pretty sweet. Okay, so that cured like perfectly. That's the hole. That's all we need. It's gonna go drain right down to the center of that boat channel. We'll clean this all up and get it in there.
Now this frame is just loosely put in. We attached it obviously to the subfloor and to that back wall there, but we left it obviously not attached to the side walls. But this is giving us about an extra foot or so of room to the deck. The deck was already big enough, but now it has an extra foot, and it has a cooler, and then it will have eventually a utility compartment right there on the side, and then a spot where we can have co-angler rod stows, and that's going to be one of my actual favorite mods later, as you'll see, but that's not really added until almost the end of the boat build. But stay tuned for all these mods.
Stay tuned, because everything after this gets really intense very quickly. The amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of material put into this boat is insane, and we have a lot of great stuff to show to you guys. See you out there.